I've been thinking a lot about the French Revolution lately and its relationship to contemporary politics here in the U.S. and around the world. Now, the French Revolution was originally was more of a populist movement in the very beginning, as the French Legislative Assembly formed after they didn't meet very often, but it was a sort of an economic emergency. France was largely broke, partly due to they helped fund the U.S. American Revolution, because France at the time was a sworn enemy of England, and so since we were fighting against England, and if England won, they would have been a lot stronger with the American Revolution. So France didn't want that, so they spent a lot on the U.S. Revolution, but that kind of made them broke, though. So they were forced to meet to figure things out for their legislative assembly. But the problem there is that there's known as three estates that had a vote in the assembly, and they voted as one body. There wasn't there was not one vote per representative. And so the three estates were: the first estate is the estate of the clergy. That's the first estate. Second estate is nobility. Third estate is everybody else, including peasants and merchants. We often think about the people refer to the revolution. When they think about it, they think that it was all against capitalism. But the third estate included the growing class of merchants, shopkeepers, who are, of course, capitalists, a form of capitalism, market capitalism. But it also included peasants and it's just everybody else. There was a large majority of the population of France were represented by the third estate. So that was the populist vote. But even though they're the vast majority of the nation, represented by the third estate, the third estate only had 1/3 of the vote in the assembly, and that didn't seem fair, of course, since they're the majority, and it voted as one. Each estate voted as one body. And then that's what kind of brought on the French Revolution. And interestingly, in all likelihood, the terms we often use to this day in talking about politics, in all likelihood, derived from from the assembly. The terms left and right, politically, in the political sense of the term, left and right. Because there's a speaker, and to the left was the more radical, part of the politicians, and to the right was the ones that wanted to keep things more the same, and but the left were largely the Jacobin club, headed by Robespierre. Robespierre is, for all intents and purposes, the leader of the French Revolution, and then on the left side of the speaker was known as the Mountain, because they're real high up, and long story short, they ended up taking control of the assembly, and I think that was after they had this tennis court meeting, and they sort of reorganized things so that everybody would supposedly have a say in the nation. So they they started to eliminate the estates altogether, so everybody have a vote, supposedly. But really, what ended up happening is that the leftists wanted to overthrow everything, complete overhaul. They ended up being the ones that took complete control. They're the ones that took over the political power for the nation, and to the point where any dissenting opinions, people who had any dissenting opinions to the leftists, to the Jacobinists, those opposing opinions were censored to the point where they could literally lose their heads by way of the guillotine. So the guillotine was not, people think about it as just for the wealthiest that faced that during the Revolution, but that was hardly the case. It was used as a tool of political persecution to people who disagreed with the leftist revolutionaries. So yeah, it was not exclusively for the wealthy. In a spoiler alert, eventually Robespierre himself ended up losing his head to the guillotine. Because it got to the point where he was expanding the political figures that might qualify for the guillotine to the point where even his inner circle, they thought that maybe they would lose their heads as well. They might qualify under the new standards. He was the new qualifying standards he was setting up for people who could face the guillotine just for exercising their speech, political speech, or their voicing their opinions. So they thought, well, we're not going to have this. His inner circle, his own people, thought, well, I don't want to face this. So they thought, well, let him off with his head. And so then even Robespierre, had his head cut off by the guillotine. So there's all sorts of people all sorts of political figures. That was known as the Reign of Terror during the 1790s, when people people would just be carted off, and there's little or no trial whatsoever, just for rumors of mere rumors of that they might be opposing the revolution. That could get you lose your head. We need to. But the thing is, it's largely ignored. The revolution, the importance of the French Revolution in looking at today's political atmosphere, even though we're using the same terms, the left and the right, and we're referring to political ideologies, political leanings to this day. And I think that we saw that the same leftism was seen during the Russian Revolution, but now like we're also talking about when we refer to the media as the fourth estate. Now that was that also, I think, just carries on to there's the third estate. So now the media became known as the fourth estate, and now most recently the fifth estate a term has been coined to refer to the social media sphere. And what has obviously happened in modern times is that first the fourth estate became under the control of today's modern version of the second estate, which is the billionaire class, and corporations and the billionaire class individuals. They're the modern version of the second estate, and they've gone to great lengths to take control of the fourth estate, the mainstream media. But now the rise of the fifth estate, it's like, then now people have a voice, and they're not at first they were not the fifth estate was all genuine free speech, because as an experiment there was not under the control of the modern second estate, the nobility, the billionaires. So I think they thought, we got to fix this. They're having too much influence, and so now we have the Um, yeah. So now we have all these measures that you're seeing now. Everybody's being canceled, they're censored, being deplatformed, losing their YouTube channels, or being removed from Twitter. I think that's just a continuation of this attempt by the second estate, the billionaires, the plutocrats, to keep control, like they have already with the fourth estate. Now they also want to have control of the fifth estate. And it's kind of interesting is that, and then also what's going on is that, in the mainstream media, the fourth estate, there's a great deal of attempt, I think, to try, to go through like a divide and conquer type of thing to prevent the rise of the modern version of the third estate, which would be just like a form of populism that could transcend the political divide. So now there's this like an effort, I think, on the part of the of the mainstream media, which is under control of the under the control of the second estate, to put everybody against each other, so they don't rise up, and then as one class, as one estate, and so that we can't have I think we need to the populists of the world need to unite. But there's a great deal of efforts being done to prevent that from happening today, by trying to manipulate any kind of like let's look back to like the January 6th uprising on the Capitol complex campus. Well, the vast majority of the people there, they're non-violent, and their actions certainly paled in comparison to the actions of the French revolutionaries. And I think that that was largely a third estate action. Those was not the corporations, not plutocrats, not billionaires. They were organizing it. Rather, it was just people that were getting frustrated, and they had a sense that the votes were not being counted. And also, I think there's frustration over all the measures of the coronavirus. These tyrannical, heavy-handed measures, the mask mandates and so on, that had people, there was a lot of frustration there, and so, but there's this attempt by the mainstream media to portray it as though there was some kind of extreme right-wing movement that was threatening the nation, but instead what it was just the populist, regular folk that were rising up there. And of course the corporations, the billionaires, they said we can't have that, so we have to smear them as much as possible. That's what was done through the fourth estate, which they control. And now we are here. We are now. So, but I'm just losing track of my train of thought a little bit here. But I just wanted to just get this idea out. I plan on talking more about this in the future. The relationship between the French Revolution and through the Russian Revolution, through today, and you say the leftism of the modern era. Now, what I wanted to at least point out for now is that I'm also in agreement that just as back in during the time of the French Revolution, that there's a problem with the disparity in wealth. There's no doubt about that. I don't have any doubt about it. Especially that there's a great deal of and that's a big problem, huge problem, and I think that that's something that the populists, the small, both the small merchants and the working class could get together and find ways to repair that kind of extreme concentration of wealth in the hands of billionaires and corporations. They can transcend other political divisions they may have and act and find a way to work together in their own interests. And that's what I think that there's the billionaires, plutocrats, corporations have. They're worried about that. They're doing everything they can to stop that possibility from happening. So there's the continual effort to divide and conquer the people, prevent a populist uprising that transcends otherwise political boundaries, political beliefs. And so what we have now is, at the same time, we're still having what I see as a rise of the kind of leftism that was seen during the Reign of Terror of the French Revolution. Once the leftists there then took control of took political control of the revolution, and as a result, they ended up with that Reign of Terror. It was horrible. But today, there's among what would be called as progressives and leftists, there is a complete amnesia about the horror of the Reign of Terror of the French Revolution, and instead they seem to think as something to be glorified. And it's the same thing with the Russian Revolution. There's a lot of amnesia about the forced labor camps that are also known as the Gulag, and also all the surveillance of the former East Germany, where one in every three citizens was spying on the other 2/3. That was horrible as well. But there's a lot of modern progressives and leftists. They forget about the bad parts and then just glorify and get frustrated by all this, all wealth disparity in the hands of a few, which is frustrating. But what happened in the French Revolution, there was that kind of frustration. It was encouraged to act on it in a vigilante type of manner, and just take out their frustrations on whoever they saw as the source, the cause of that kind of wealth disparity. It was sort of like trying to find whipping boys. Now, if you don't know what a whipping boy is, that just refers to during the Middle Ages in castles, and kings. Kings and queens. They would have the prince would have would sometimes misbehave, and the staff of the court would get frustrated, and they want to take their frustrations out on somebody, but of course they can't whip or take their frustrations out on the future king. So they would find there would be a designated whipping boy, who is the person who is designated to be there to allow the court staff to be able to whip and take their frustrations out on, in lieu of the prince. Even though it was the prince who misbehaved, they took the frustrations out on the designated whipping boy. It was completely unfair. They shouldn't be whipping anybody, but in the first place. But and they certainly, especially, should not be whipping somebody who had nothing to do with the misbehavior of the prince. But it was just a psychological tool. That they knew, part of the nobility knew well, and they knew these court staff are just going to get so frustrated that if they don't have somebody to take their frustration out on, so they designated a particular boy to take, so that they could be whipped in lieu of instead of having to whip the future king. So that I think that's what was done during the Reign of Terror of the French Revolution, is that the revolutionists, the intellectuals, who should have been guiding things in an intellectual, rational manner, instead encouraged and whipped up a frenzy among the people to go ahead and find a whipping boy and just go like a mob and engage in an orgy of violence, take out your frustrations on anybody. And that's what was done. So many hundreds, if not thousands, of people lost their heads, and in a most brutal, horrendous manner. And instead, so what should have been done is reorganizing the wealth of the nation, and reorganize the political power of the nation in a rational, intellectual manner. But that was not done. So now you have to go through it like the Russian Revolution. First, they started off on wrong foot, where they just slaughtered the Romanov family, including the women and children, and then they carried it up through the forced labor camps, and now we have, coming up through the modern era. Today we have all these the rioters, misnamed protesters that are maybe burning and looting. It's continuing to go on in places like Portland, especially, whereby people just take out their frustrations, basically, instead of trying to come up with a fair political system. Instead of that, people are just taking out their frustrations in a emotional, psychological matter, just looking for a whipping boy, or with a woke cancel culture, just looking for somebody to take their frustrations out on, rather than trying to come up with a rational political, socioeconomic political system that's fair and just. That's what we should be doing, not regressing back to the horrors of the French Revolution, Reign of Terror ideology that was just a big horrific mess, and it needs to be acknowledged that the big horrific mess that it was, and it's not something to glorify or emulate in any manner, way, shape, or form. We can do better than that. There are ways to come up with a fair and just system that is populist and organized in a rational manner, where no heads need to roll, and just the opposite of anything. Just people can, if anything, be released from prison. They don't have to go to prison. We have people get released, have more freedom, less prison for nonviolent offenses. No more, like end the war on drugs, for one thing, for instance. People should not be going to prison for doing whatever they want to do with their own bodies. That's just one example. But so that's basically what I wanted to begin with for this video. It's been a long time since I put a video out. I certainly haven't stopped thinking about all these socioeconomic, political philosophy ideas, and which one we're still working on. I'm going to plan on continuing to, and especially in relation to the French Revolution to today's politics, which I think should be discussed a lot more than it has been, or than it is. Very rarely do I hear any kind of mention of that revolution in relation to modern political dialogue, but it needs to be. Just don't want to repeat the same mistakes of the past, and that was one big mistake right there in the French Revolution, how it was carried out. So I guess that's all for now. Just want to get this video out. I'm going to upload it. If you're watching, thanks for watching.